everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 6 of My Hero Academia, season 6. And wow, so this season's been really good. I've really been happy with how they have done this season, both animation-wise and pacing-wise. It's been very on par with the manga. I've really enjoyed it. And so yeah, now Shigaraki's awake. He's awake, he's killing heroes left and right, and there's imminent destruction on the horizon, and just now we're getting back to Deku and Todoroki and Bakugo and seeing what they're doing with all of this. So it's great, right? So I've been very curious. I've been very curious. I usually don't look at the episode titles when I start this, but I happened to glance when I clicked on this, and I saw Encounter Part 2, and I was like, oh... and I was like, wait a minute, the first encounter, and I went and checked, and yeah, the first encounter is the season finale of season 2. It's really weird, because I always thought, and the season 2 finale is when they all go to the mall, and Deku runs into Shigaraki for the first time, and they have that conversation. And I always thought in the back of my memory that it was season 1 when that happened, so the fact that it was season 2 floors me. I'm like, wait, we had to wait till season 2 to get that moment between them? Huh. So that always surprises me when I think back of where that was placed in the series. But yeah, so I did glance down, see the episode title for this week, and was like, aha! Because yeah, it's part 2 of the encounter of Shigaraki and Deku meeting each other possibly again. Again, I have not read the manga since it came out. I've not reread this part of the manga for intentions because I want to be surprised at where they end up placing things, but I have ideas of what we could be doing in this episode, but then I'm not sure, so it's gonna be fun to see exactly how it plays out. But yeah, the parallels are there. I mean, it's in the OP, it's in the ED, the parallels of Shigaraki and Deku wanting to save everyone and Shigaraki wanting to destroy everyone, so it's like, it's great. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what all we get in this episode. Crust, R.I.P. dude. R.I.P. Crust. I'm gonna miss him. And I thought it was executed womp womp, really well last episode with the heroes dying and it being just soundless, being in silence. I thought that was handled really well. The sound design's been great this season. Bones has done a good job with the animation. I was actually told in the comments that the director of the movies was responsible for helping to direct this season. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense because it definitely has a more cinematic feel to it and the animation has stepped up a notch. So the fact that the movie director's on board with this season, that has me really excited because that makes me hopeful that there's going to be some parts of this season that I really want to see animated well that will get that special treatment. So that makes me very, very excited. But yeah, yep. I'm ready to go through this episode and just see where it takes us, and then we'll have a discussion and spoiler corner at the end. So, but in any case, I hope y'all are excited. I woke up this morning and was like, no, it is time. It's like rainy and cold outside, and I was like, I need some My Hero Academia to brighten the morning. So let's get that, shall we? We're going to start episode 6 of My Hero Academia season 6, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and we're going to turn on the sound and let's go. So yeah, I've been really happy with this season, if you can't tell. It's so good because I'll be honest, I was a bit worried in season 5 because I liked season 5, and season 5 had a hard climb uphill because honestly the manga during the events of season 5 was in that weird transitional period for Horikoshi. I feel like Horikoshi was trying to like wrap one arc up, set up things that would happen in season 6, and then trying to make it all cohesively work together in an anime format. Because I honestly, I said this back in season 5, I don't think Horikoshi writes for anime. I think he just writes for it being a manga, and then the animation studio has to kind of piece it together. But I will say that so far, the manga and season 6 has been much more fluid, much more fast-paced, much more engaging than season 5's content was, which was really great. And I was worried going into this season. I was like, I love the content of season 6 and what I think is going to happen. And I'm afraid that like the animation won't do it justice, that the pacing, it won't be done right. It's been done right so far. The animation was great this episode. There were parts of Shigaraki I was like, that's genuinely creepy. It translated really well. And then there's parts of the soundtrack that were just like this ominous, dark, booming, bombastic orchestral soundtrack. And then just the pacing and everything, it's all worked out really well. The stuff between Deku and Bakugo, the comedic timing, I'm like, yes, please. It's all been really nice. And we're now like into the meat of Shigaraki versus Deku, and so it's like, just we're here. So I was really happy with this episode. There was a couple moments I was like, oh yeah, but there was a lot from this episode that I didn't remember, and I was like, okay, because I have in my mind this vague timeline of what I remember happening in this season, and the highlights that I've wanted to have, like the bucket list of things I want to check off. A lot of it hasn't happened yet. A lot of it has not happened yet. But I was trying to remember, like, what happens during this part of the story. And yeah, there's a lot that happens, but I want to go back through this and talk with y'all, and then obviously we'll have spoiler corners. But again, like I said in the reaction itself, Horikoshi definitely leans into the comic book aspects of it. Reminds me a lot of the late 80s, early 90s comic books. And my dad was a big like Batman fan, and so he would get me like Batman comics, which are very gritty and darker, but then he'd also get me like Justice League. And My Hero Academia reminds me of like the early 90s Justice League comics. Like there was serious stuff going on in them and some serious themes and serious things I remember reading as a kid. But then there'd be like Plastic Man like at a mall doing crazy stuff, and you'd be like, and that kind of quirkiness, no pun intended, kind of reminds me a lot of My Hero Academia. So I feel like Horikoshi maybe saw a lot of those Western comics in the 90s and was influenced by them, and he kind of really leans into it. And I like that because I could see him, he's been slowly trying to integrate that darker tone, and I think that so far season 6 done a really good job of that he's been able to keep the quirky comic book style of it and the humor of the superhero genre, but he's slowly made it he's just tweaked it little bits by little bits to make it like darker, and I think it works really well. God, it's great. But yeah, so Fat Gum, old Fat Gum, what can we do with him? There's a lot of cinematic qualities of this episode, which again, you have the director of the movies working on it, so that makes a lot of sense. But just Fat Gum like moving through the trees, the close up on the tubes of the Nomus that were left over, I'm like, are you joking? Like it worked out really, really well. But poor Fat Gum. Fat Gum's just like, I have one job, to watch these kids, and y'all are making it difficult. But what I like about Fat Gum's character is that he's not mad at Tokiyami when he sees him. He's just more like, okay, you're safe. Good. And he's more concerned that Hawks just looks completely done for, which is really sad. I said it in the reaction and in the Discord we were talking about it, but after I finished episode 5's discussion, I went back and we were talking about it in the Discord, and I found some images from the manga from those chapters. I think it was like chapter 272 maybe. But the image where Mount Lady is falling on Fat Gum, the one thing I hate that the subtitles don't do is that the official English translation, when Fat Gum jumps out of the way of Mount Lady, he's like, booty incoming! Booty incoming is hilarious, and I wish that they'd kept that in the translation here. Instead he says a bottom, and it's just not funny. But I was like, the booty incoming is so freaking hilarious, especially Fat Gum being like, oh god, get her away! Mount Lady's amazing, though. She's one of my favorites. I love how much her character's actually come a long way, because she starts out when we first meet her in the show as being this kind of like diva, prissy, like she's like, I'm a superhero, but I'm here for just like the advertising and modeling. And by this point in the story, she's like a full-fledged hero, like fighting off the Liberation Front and just trying her best to keep everybody safe. Can't help it, she's like 50 meters tall. Can't help it, she's like the size of a colossal titan. What can she do? I love that Tokiyami, when he's carrying Hawks, though, he has like little tears in his eyes, like, my mentor, oh, bless his heart. And Tokiyami, I love his eyes narrowing, like, what has Hawks been doing? What has happened? And he tells Tokiyami to go to the first aid wing out in the forest. But yeah, the heroes, Getten just showing up, Getten being a boss and being like, I'll get things done, and the other heroes like coming in, Kamui Woods. Cementos versus Getten is kind of hilarious, because it's like man-made concrete versus ice, which is like of nature. I mean, two elemental type quirks going at it, which is fun. And I do like Getten's design. Getten's a very beautiful man. If you told me he was Ray, if you told me he was Todoroki's mom's brother or something, I wouldn't have been surprised. He has ice powers too. Secret relatives? Who knows? I don't know the answer to that question. But he's just so pretty with his ice quirks. And then Mount Lady's just like, I love Mount Lady grabbing the cement bat and just going to town. And she's like, I'll crush your brains. I was like, girl, whoa. I love it where she just takes the bat and runs. It's absolutely fantastic. Like doing whack-a-mole with all of them. There was one animation part that was kind of hilarious, and I don't think it was intentional, is that you see some of the heroes running, and then there's this one guy, and I'm going to take a photo of him to put in the Discord, but he's like one of the heroes running to go into the mansion. He looks like he's the most unimpressed. Maybe I can show you all a picture of it. He's the most unimpressed. He's just like, just so I could have been at home. I'm like, what is happening? I love he's like following this guy that looks like a Funyun around. I forgot about Compress. I forgot Compress was still in the mansion. But we have the one, Toga is the one hero that was killed by Twice. It didn't register to me that that's the blood of the one guy she had taken. And that's who she was imitating when she was stabbing all of them. It didn't hit me. But reading the manga, I didn't realize it was Toga either. But the fact that the hero had a knife, now it's like, okay, no, Toga would have a knife to get the blood. That all makes sense. Meanwhile, Compress is just like, oh my god, what do I do? Because Compress is kind of like, I'm kind of useless here. Compress is not like a wide-range melee fighter. Compress is like, I put things in marbles and run away with them. He's like, this fight is not mine. He's like, what am I gonna do? So he's just kind of like sitting on the sidelines being like, I don't know what to do. I guess he could put a bunch of people into marbles, but what would we do with that? And then Dobby just casually shows up. Dobby's just like, oh yeah, hey. He's like, aren't you gonna run? He's like, where have you been? You're a lieutenant. And he's like, well, so are you. What are you doing? And I love that Dobby goes, this playing at military thing, it's not really working anymore. Dobby's like the temp that on the 5th day is like, I'm just not feeling it. Just like, Dobby's such a trash king, but I love him. He's like, where are the others? And Compress is like, Twice was killed. Probably. When he says that and Dobby does not respond, Dobby doesn't give him any answer to that. So it's kind of like, you just question, like, why wouldn't Dobby say anything? Because Dobby made such a big deal telling Hawks and Tokiyami that Twice was killed by a hero. Why wouldn't he say anything to Compress? But maybe he does later. I don't remember. But Dobby's just like, who knows? I tried to stop her, but she went anyway. And I can't believe Toga would lose her cool like that. Because, yeah, here's the thing. Toga, at the end of the day, she realizes, and I love that because I'd forgotten she'd taken the blood of the hero and became him. And I thought that, because honestly, the hero's design in that part looks kind of villainous with like the ripped off mask, looks kind of villainous. So when she started killing the heroes, at first I thought, oh yeah, villain's just attacking them from behind. But no, they were surprised. And so what I love is that when you get the close-up of her talking, you see like the mask start to come off and you see her teeth and everything. Like you see her slowly transforming back. It's great. And so then she's thinking about Twice as she's stabbing all of them. And I love that Twice's ability to make the doubles, whenever it falls apart, it just kind of crumbles like a bunch of mud and dirt. And I love that she has the same thing happen to her hands, like it's all crumbling around her. It's so good. It's really, really well done. And she like remembers everything that he was like telling her. And then I love when it all just pours off of her and she shows her hugging Twice as he died. And she just, yeah, she's like a world of only things I like. And they did such a good job of like animating her. It's very tasteful nudity. She like comes out, it's very tastefully done. I love it. And she's just like, nope, remembering her friend. And Gang Orca just like, that would hurt if Gang Orca grabbed your face and like echolocationed it, like just knocked you out. But then Gigantamachia showing up and everyone hearing it. Oh, it's so good. And Toga, you're in the way, heroes. Like with her Sailor Moon buns and everything, and Gigantamachia's hand ripping up and showing with her in front. So good. So good. It was just like the manga. I love it. I love that everybody's freaking out and Compress is like, okay, Gigantamachia's here, and Dobby's like, oh, he's awake, huh? What a bitch. Oh yeah, and Dobby with that little smirk. So we cut back to Shigaraki. He's getting all the assets ready. He's got his quirk destroying bullets in his pocket, which will surely not come back in any way, shape, or form. And then the whole thing about one for all and all for one. This is the sad part about it, is that at this point he's hearing all for one's head in his voice in his head, and the doctor has said that all for one was trying to transfer everything to Shigaraki, which includes him. And so Shigaraki is kind of like, he's become this vessel for all these quirks for all for one, but it's kind of like, here's the price. Yeah, you're going to get all these quirks, but also here's the soul of this crazed old man that's going to inhabit your body. Hope you're ready for that. And it's like, ugh! And all for one, all he wants is the ability of one for all. That's what he wants. He wants his brother's ability. And it's like, ah, yep. And then I love the representation of Shigaraki and the voice in his head being like the purples and reds. And then you have Deku that has the blues and greens. It's really cool. I like it. It's all sparkly. And Encounter 2. Endeavor, my dude! I give Endeavor... The way that... Oh God, Shigaraki's voice actor, though. Shigaraki's voice actor was so good in this episode. So good. Like, the inflection he had on some of the voices. Like, you come and get me right when I wake up. Like, just the inflection he had. Oh, so good. When we first heard Shigaraki, like, back in season 1, season 2, I was like, he doesn't sound threatening. He sounds threatening here. It's like he's just fully, like, coming to his own as a villain. And it's terrifying, right? But man, Shigaraki and Endeavor, they don't play. Endeavor coming down and just being like, I'm gonna burn you alive. Endeavor's like, bye, Hell's Curtain. And I love the whoosh in the comic book font. It's very, very fun. But man, the animation where he's like, it's a curtain of scorching hellfire. You can't run from it. Just, oh God, and Shigaraki with like his eyes and everything like just bugged out on fire. What the hell? Just absolutely terrifying. Some of the imagery of Shigaraki is so scary. But yeah, he's gained all these quirks from All for One, which include the regeneration quirk. Like he can regenerate his arms and tissue and everything at a fast rate. He is essentially a perfected Nomu, which makes you wonder if the whole time, if that's been All for One's goal with the Nomu from the start, is just to create a vessel that could harbor his quirks as well as his soul. That's why I wonder, if this entire time all the research on the Nomus was to create this vessel that could harbor his soul and all of his quirks and carry on when his body failed and like broke down, especially after All Might beat him to a pulp multiple times. And it's interesting because it's funny, all of the corpses never worked. It was like all the bodies never worked, but he found a living body to inhabit, which is kind of sad because on the one hand you'd be like, well, humanely, if All for One was going to transfer to a body, it'd be better if it was a Nomu because they were a corpse. They're not an actual person anymore. But here he's trying to transfer to a living being, and that's problematic because there's already a soul in there. So it's very interesting, but I like that Shigaraki represents like All for One's goal in this. But Endeavor's just like, nah, we ain't going to have time to waste. We got to fight him. All the quirks he's stockpiled. And then, yeah, Shigaraki, we see him. I love that idea. He's like, all the quirks that have been stockpiled within me, it feels like I've had them since birth. Like, just, it just gives you chills. Because it's like that 4 months of hell that he endured, he's only 75% complete, like, made him to where he could handle all these quirks and feel like they were so natural. And he's like this omnipotence. This feeling that he's more powerful than anybody else. Which is how All for One has felt. So you kind of get a little bit of an insight through Shigaraki of how All for One's like power drunkenness has kind of come to be, because Shigaraki vocalizes it, right? All for One up until this point has been so mysterious to us as the audience. But with Shigaraki, you kind of get it verbalized where he's like, I feel like everything's in the palm of my hand. Like I feel like I'm omnipotent. I'm, limitless with this power. And it's like, okay, well, that's how All for One has felt. So the fact that he's kind of been drunk on power all these years, centuries, whatever, it all makes sense, right? But yeah, it gets the quirk killing bullets. He gets at least 2 of them that we see, and he grabs the hand. He can't let it go. That is the one thing. He reaches for the one hand, right? It's the one thing he can't let go of it. He has to have one thing there. And I love that you see slowly his face and his ears regenerating. It's like, oh my God. But then he says, I have all this power and I'm limitless, but why am I not satisfied? And he justifies, as All for One tells him, that it's because he doesn't have one for all. That's why he's not satisfied. It's like there's the idea that, I love the visual of Shigaraki just slumping back in the seat like he's ready to go. It was the only power All For One wanted that didn't go the way he wanted and he didn't get. So it kind of is like, it's Shigaraki's been represented with that itch. He has that itch that he can't scratch, that itch he can't get over, and now it's given a tangible quality. He's like, okay, this itch that I've had, I wanted to scratch it and it's never worked. If I get one for all, I'll be satisfied. And you get the impression that that's how All For One has been this entire time. He's just wanted that quirk. He hasn't been able to get it, and it's been driving him crazy. And so, yeah, he's just like, that's what I'm going to go for. It was the only power that I wasn't given that I need. And just, the way that he, like, there's something inside of me urging me on. And then, yeah, we have the hole where he steals the powers from. I just love Shigaraki versus Endeavor. If you had told me back way before the manga that this was going to be a matchup, I'd been like, Endeavor versus Shigaraki? No, that would never work. Right? But he is like one of the Nomus now. I need to get it. And it shows that rainbow in his eyes. Like, that's All For One. He's like, one for all. And I like Endeavor's like, what? One for all? What's happening? And they all have these communication links, right? So at this point, Deku's like, well, shit. Because at this point, Endeavor's like, one for all? What's that? What's going on with that? And Deku's like, he's like the Muppet that's just like, oh my God. Like the Fox Muppet that's just rattered. Because Vernon's like, what's that? And Deku's like, oh no. It's just like, it's like everybody's figuring it out. He's like, my secret. Not good. Not good at all. And so then, meanwhile, I thought this was handled really well because we went back to the Pussycat's lair. It's the tiniest little moment. In the manga, it was actually the start of a chapter. And if you watch this episode, it kind of feels like it, right? In the manga, one chapter ended with Deku being like, they all heard All For One, oh no. And then another chapter, I believe, I could be wrong, but I thought another chapter started with the Pussycat's lair, and it was kind of like a little misdirect, and then we got back to the story. But I love that they all have like color-themed laptops with the ears on it that go along with their chairs. So cute. And then our poor girl that had the search quirk, she's stuck there by herself because she doesn't have a quirk anymore. If I had search, I could help the others. Aww. And it shows her like in her prime ragdoll that she had the special quirk. And it allowed her... The search quirk is amazing! The search quirk tells you the location and weakness of whoever you've looked at. I'm like, that's an insanely, like, very helpful quirk. I'm like, what the hell? So, here's the thing. We get the aspect... I wasn't paying attention to the little dots and the lights. So, the lights of the people that we got, let me find them. They were like the top row and a few others, right? And so, which ones were they focused on? The lights were... We can kind of... Okay, so we have... Froggy, we have Deku, Bakugo, Ochako, Ida, Shoto, and Koda. We have those ones focused on of the group. And then we see them all. Now, of course, they don't... that's what I was trying to figure out because I don't remember which one's following them to the battlefield. I feel so bad for not remembering that. I have an idea. And in the spoiler corner, I'll say who the idea is, but I'm not certain. And I was hoping going back and watching this episode, I'm like, oh, we'll be able to figure out who's following Deku and Bakugo from the lights. But then they mix them all up there, and I was like, oh, damn it, you can't. In the spoiler corner, I'll talk about who I think it is and who I think I remember it is, but I can't remember right now. And I'm not going to go back and look. I want to be surprised. But I was like, dang it, I can't remember who it is. But yeah, Shigaraki. Like, looking in his eye and seeing the quirk and looking for one for all. And Burnen's like, I'm going to go help Endeavor. You guys evacuate the others, okay? And they're like, Burnen, wait. And so Deku and them's like, what do we do? We're a bunch of kids. And poor Izuku. Like, his, like, green eyes, like, just, like, glowing there. He's like, what do we do? He's like, one for all. Oh, my gosh. He's like, he's right there. Like, oh, Shigaraki's eyes glowing in the face. It's so creepy. Oh my gosh, it's so creepy. Oh, it's creepy. Oh my god. And like the wrinkles and the dryness of his face. Oh, it's terrifying. And then he just like pushes Endeavor away because he has like all these quirks stockpiled. So he uses like the radio waves and then he just jumps. But the jumping thing is just him. Because, yeah, the animation of that part's so good. But, yeah, him just jumping away in that moment, and us realizing as the audience that he does have some superhuman strength. Not on the level of All Might, but some superhuman strength given to him. And it's like, oh my god. But yeah, and Deku's like, I need to get out of here. But yeah, him like flying towards Deku and them, it's animated so creepy. It's really well done. Mm-hmm. And he's just like got his arms spread out, T-posing as he's like, Deku, let me give you a hug. Deku's like, no. I mean, Deku probably would. Deku would give anybody a hug, I think. Any free hug sign at a convention, Deku would be like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And then, yeah, so Deku's like, what do I do? And he sees, I did like how well this part was done, where he sees all the people, like, evacuating, and he's like, we are not safe here. He's like, if Shigaraki shows up here, then all these people are at risk. He's like, I need to leave. And I like how it slowly zooms in on him as he's thinking about it. And so then we have, like, this wolf man leading people, which is great. We have the one girl that's like, no way, Funk Man's dead. Not Funk Man! And then who drags her away? This one guy's like, mourn him later. And her hat falls off like, damn, Funk Man died. So sad. And then I like the one that has like, it looks like a black mage and it has just like everybody in its pack on its back. And then somebody's walking away with like their wolf girlfriend. It's like, oh man, I love it. And there's different people like leading the evacuation and Deku's like, what do we do? And he's like, okay. So he just takes off running and who follows him? Bakugo. He's like, if you tell your secret here, the heroes will split up trying to protect you. I love Bakugo's like Naruto running beside him being like, what you gonna do, Deku? And he's like, yeah, it's too much going on. Bakugo is surprisingly, that's the thing about his character. Bakugo is a big hothead. He's a big hothead and his pride gets the better of him a lot. But in moments of real need of genuine reflection and strategy and like critical thinking, he kind of gets in the moment. He's like, okay, this is what I need to do, and then goes and does it, right? So Bakugo's not dumb. He's not like a hot-aired meathead. He knows exactly what to do. He just has a temper problem. You know, he's like, you only had one choice, and they both go. He's like, we need to prioritize safety of the civilians and get out of here. And he's like, you have to go. You have to move. And everybody's like, where are you going? And I love Deku's like, I forgot something. And Todoroki and them were like, what could you have forgotten? We're in the middle of an evacuation. What could you have left behind? Why, what do you need to go get? It's kind of hilarious. Deku's like, I don't have another explanation. Bye. I love the Spider-Man using of the Black Whip. Again, I'm so convinced Black Whip is very Spider-Man influenced. And Deku believes that the cloud of dust will keep him from being able to see him. I do love the animation of Deku's face in this moment where he's thinking, he's like, we could use the dust to our advantage to hide us unless he has this other way of finding us. And it's all in green and purple and Deku's just like, what do we do? Can he find us any other way? And I'm like, oh, it's so well animated. Which, yeah, he's got the search quirk. He can find you that way. And then, of course, Shigaraki's like, oh, there you are. He moved. Mm-hmm. And I love that Deku's like, I've got to tell somebody where we're headed and that he knows, right? He's like, I'm sorry for using the private line. I like that in the middle of this conflict, Deku's like, he's like, I'm sorry on the private line. Please forgive me. I hope it's okay. It's like, Deku, this is a pretty serious moment. It's going to be fine. He's like, Shigaraki could be after me. And Endeavor's like, what? What do you mean he could be after you? Because at this point, Endeavor doesn't know that Deku has one for all. So he's like, what are you talking about? He doesn't even know what it is. It's like, he's like, I could lure people here to somewhere with no people. We could lure him to a place where no one can get hurt, right? And then, of course, Bakugo's like, I'll crush him. And Bakugo thinks back to when, in Season 3, Shigaraki kidnapped him and lured All Might there. So for Deku, his whole goal is to keep Shigaraki away from the civilians, and he knows Shigaraki's coming after him, so he's like, I just need to get to a place where I can see Shigaraki and he doesn't hurt any of the people. Bakugo is like on a revenge path. Bakugo's like, you're the reason that All Might fell, and you're like one of the sources of my trauma, so he's like, I'm after you for that reason. It's like, okay. So you have these two heroes with very different motivations towards going after Shigaraki. I like that Endeavor is like, he's like, you kids, what's going on? And so Endeavor's like, there's no time for all this. Like, we gotta go. And just Shigaraki just like flying through the air on his own accord. It's so creepy. They do a good job of just making Shigaraki feel very threatening. The data left by the previous user. They saw him right before the quirk was stolen. Lucky me. Yeah, they saw Deku right before it was stolen. That is lucky Shigaraki, right? And then he just like, oh god, like the animation here, he's like, he's landed. I'm like, what the hell? The shot of Shigaraki just like on his side, like against the, like emotionless against the ground. It's just like, what the hell is happening? Like, just Shigaraki's on a warpath, and he's not got time to think about anything else. Oh my gosh, and Endeavor is trying his hardest to stop him, but it's just not working. They changed course. He's moving southwest now. And so Deku's like, oh, thank you very much! I can buy time to evacuate everyone. Deku being super polite. And so, of course, Shigaraki's like, this whole communicator thing is a pain. He's like, I don't like this. And so he manages to use the shockwaves and blending two quirks together to like fizzle out their communicators. So now they can't talk to one another on the communicators. How convenient. How convenient for setting up like a nightmare scenario, right? Why would we want to do that? I like that the Hero Commission and stuff are just sitting there like, well, what do we do now? Like they have no plan. They're just like, they're so reliant on the heroes that without the heroes, they just can't really do anything. It's an interesting commentary on that side of it, that they're so reliant upon the heroes. And Endeavor, meanwhile, is thinking, he's like, why is he targeting Midoriya? Why is Shigaraki going after him? He's after One for All. Midoriya was able to lure him over. How does this work? What's going on? Endeavor's like trying to reason with it, right? Because Endeavor's not dumb. All he knows is Midoriya's in danger. And then Bakugo's like, I know he's coming after you. Are you listening? The scumbag's turned into a monster. It's all the more reason to make sure you don't get caught. And of course, Deku is probably not thinking about him being a monster. He's like, and then, yeah, Deku's not worried about Shigaraki because it's Deku. He turns over and he's like, Bakugo, why are you following me? He's like, you're in danger being here. And I love that Bakugo's like, I'm gonna crush you. And it's like, I love when Bakugo gets the big eyes that like slant. It's so cute. And he's like, under these circumstances, I was the only one who could understand what was going on without an explanation. So I had to go with you. And then but Deku's like, okay, thanks! Like, he's so stressed. He's so stressed. And Bakugo's like, don't think so highly of yourself. Follow you? What, you think you're the main character or something? I love this whole time, 6 seasons in, Bakugo still thinks he's the main character, and it's not Deku. It's absolutely wonderful. I love it. But Bakugo, his whole business here is to get revenge on Shigaraki for everything that's happened to All Might. He's like, you're going to be the bait, Deku. I'll get a complete victory. It's like, oh my gosh. And he has like the feral eyes. I'm like, Bakugo, honey. But the thing about it is that Deku's like, okay, I can do all of these things to make it to where we can maybe fight Shigaraki. Like, it'll be okay. We've gotten stronger. Bakugo's like, we're trying everything to keep up. And I like that Bakugo is like, talking about Deku, he's like, Deku right now is only at 30%. And normally for a character like Bakugo, you would think that that would discourage him. He's like, oh, he's this strong and he's only 30% and I'm struggling to keep up. You think that would discourage him, but instead he's like, oh, he's at 30% right now. I can keep up with that. And it's like, he's like still pushing on and not being, downtrodden by that information. And then he gets in front of Deku, like they both get on the same level. He's like, I can't quit while I'm behind. That's such a good shot of them both like propelling forward. It's a shame that Shigaraki shows up out of nowhere, and just like in the manga, they immediately have this sense of death. It's like the thing that they felt back when they saw All for One and Kamino, that feeling of death and destruction, and it makes them feel like they're about to die. Yep. And then, it's echoing inside my head, telling me to get One for All. And we see like this, just the feeling of death and the bloodlust hits Deku and Bakugo, and they feel like they're going to disintegrate into dust, and there's nothing they can do. And then Gran Torino sweeps in like the boss that he is. I forgot Gran Torino swept in and saved them. I was like, how did they get out of this situation? I was like, I know they don't die here, but how did they happen? It was Gran Torino. Because he's a freaking grandpa boss. And I forgot that Ryuku, the dragon girl, she shows up. She shows up to fight Shigaraki with Endeavor. I forgot about that. And then Aizawa, of course. Aizawa's quirk being perfect. Like if we've got to neutralize Shigaraki's abilities, then let's do this here and now. But the thing of it is, Shigaraki's quirk stealing powers and the ability to use multiple quirks is gone. However, his super strength is not. That's all been augmented into them. It's not a quirk. It's just some kind of augmentation like what happened with the first Nomu in season 1. But Gran Torino's like, the heroes aren't dead yet, kid. We're an oversaturated market. Kind of oversaturated for moments like this, I guess. But he's like, we can still back you kids up. You kids aren't going to have to be the reason. You don't have to defend us. We can defend you. Oh my gosh. And Aizawa, he's like, Crust, you sacrificed yourself to save all of us, to let me live. So I'm not going to let your sacrifice be in vain. And we even got, we'll talk about in the spoiler corner, but Aizawa's past with Kurogiri. He's like, my quirk, my life, in order to take you down. And she's like, Shigaraki. And Shigaraki's like, you're so cool, Eraser. He's like, don't lay a finger on my students. I'm like, oh, Aizawa's like best teacher. He's like, leave my kids alone. It's like, oh, Aizawa, you sweet man. Don't lay a finger on them. You are really cool, Eraserhead. Yeah, Aizawa's freaking cool. So cool. I love him. But yeah, I forgot about Kido. Kido being one of Endeavor's sidekicks and having this like ability to alter trajectories. Like he works like the little super speed ramp in a Mario Kart game. I'm like, that's kind of cool. I like that. But man, Endeavor flying up to face Shigaraki. Rocklock's there to help support Aizawa. And I love Manuel coming in. Manuel. Horikoshi does a great job of when you have heroes that pop up for a few times and they have like very specific quirks. And you're like, when will that ever be useful? And Horikoshi's like 6 seasons later. Like, because we saw back in season 2 with Stain, we saw Manuel because Ito was working with him in the summer program. And here you're like, well, what would Manuel's power of like manipulating water do? But here he's able to keep Aizawa's eyes moisturized so he can keep using his quirk. I'm like, Horikoshi, that's genius. I love that. I love that little moment all kind of adds up. And Manuel's like, if I go overboard, it'll make your eyes sting. So we have to work together. Oh. But yeah, Endeavor just showing up. Like, there was a figurine released on the Discord. But it was like, Endeavor like having leg muscles and thigh muscles that shouldn't even exist. Like, what the hell? He's too beefy. He's too beefy for the screen. And then Shigaraki's just excited to face Endeavor. He's like, you've killed too many. And then he's like, oh no. And then, yeah, Endeavor just fires all of this jet burn and everything. But he manages to get away. He propels. He's like, that hurt. And he's like, I haven't released Erasure yet, so it's not his quirk. Yeah, his own strength. Yep. So, yeah, getting him burned like before, it's not going to be easy. And so then they call him a monster. Mm-hmm. His movements are getting better and better. And Shigaraki's like, I'm just waking up. Yeah. And so Gran Torino tells Deku and Bakugo, he's like, y'all are going to stay right here. And they're like, why didn't we go further away? And Gran Torino's reason is pretty smart. He's like, Shigaraki's after you. If you guys get too far out of range, he's like, it's like really good writing on Horikoshi's part because it makes it to where it's not a plot convenience that Deku and Bakugo are there. There's a reason behind it. Because at first I was like, well, why don't you get them as far away as you can? That would make more sense, right? Are they just there because it's convenient for the plot? But the answer is that he's like, Gran Torino's like, we have a racer right here. He's getting rid of Shigaraki's quirk so that he can't decay the world around us and kill everybody. So we need to stay within range. We need to keep Shigaraki in range of Aizawa. And we don't, except for Gran Torino and Endeavor, there's not really anybody that could move fast enough to keep up with Shigaraki. So he's like, we need to keep Shigaraki detained right here. So in order for us to do that, you have to stay close by Deku because he's after you. So we just need to keep you like on the edge of the perimeter where you're not directly in the line of fire, but you're not so far away that Shigaraki feels he needs to go find you. And that's really smart. I like that Horikoshi does that. That's a really smart way of thinking about it. But Gran Torino being like, I'll be Eraser's legs. I was like, Gran Torino, I love you, but you're an aging hero. I get death flags for you. I don't want that. No. And then, yeah, we cut back to All for One. Stealing the quirks, getting all that. And Gran Torino's like, the enemy's only one person. He's like, we shouldn't have to worry about it. The enemy's only one person. We got this. It's like, okay. Sure. And Vernon's showing up. And then the thing about it is, what I love is they're all like, wait, how are these tubes not destroyed by the decay? And the answer is that it was intentional. The answer, it was a very intentional. And what I love is that this shot of Endeavor and Bakugo and Gran Torino, I want to get a picture of it. They're like, why? Why are they okay? I love their expressions. In the manga, their expressions were exactly that. And it was so hilarious. But yeah, so apparently when Shigaraki decayed everything around him, he was able to not decay a few of the tubes intentionally. It makes sense why the quirk stealing bullet case was destroyed, because Exless fired at it before Shigaraki was awakened, so there wasn't anything Shigaraki could do to prevent it from being any more destroyed. But I like that he intentionally left the tubes with the Nomus in it, just in case it was needed to be awakened. But yeah, I love their face. They're all just standing there like, are you serious? It's straight up out of the manga. It was hilarious in the manga. It's wonderful here. It doesn't translate quite as well as the manga in the moment here, but it's still really good. But yeah, the whole lab should have fallen under decay, but it did not. Instead, why are there Nomus here? And they're just the creepy dog. The dog Nomu is probably my favorite Nomu design. And I'm a dog person, so I just love, like, it looks like a Doberman. It's so good. I'm like, Horikoshi. I remember seeing that in the manga and everybody was like, oh my god, dog Nomu! It's wonderful. And that's the episode. And that's it. So, I do have some spoilers. Like, not a lot of spoilers I want to talk about, but I do want to talk about a few spoilers. So, I'm going to leave that for the spoiler corner, but really happy with this episode. Really happy with Shigaraki's voice acting, with the animation. So good. Really, really pleased with how they made everything look in this episode. So I've got a few spoilers I want to talk about. So if you're going to stick around for the spoiler corner, that'd be great. But if not, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all next week with episode 7 of My Hero Academia. So, Yep. I don't have a lot of spoilers, but there are a few that I wanted to talk about going through this episode. The whole thing with Mount Lady, it should have been foreshadowing from the start that Mount Lady's going to face Gigantamachia. It should have been foreshadowing. I was like, oh yeah. I went ahead and watched the preview when I was done with the initial reaction. I went ahead and watched the preview, and I think it's going to show Gigantamachia and Mount Lady facing one another. And then Gigantamachia, like, starting his descent of destruction towards Shigaraki and all of them. But it seemed like next week's more of a transitional episode, so it's going to be fun. The preview didn't give much of anything away, so other than Mount Lady versus Gigantamachia. So I think that's going to be about it as far as the spoilers. But I'm going to be interested to see what all they get through next episode. Like, how far do we get? That's going to be the curious thing, right? So there's that. But yeah, oh man, this episode. So all the stuff with Dobby, God, when you go back and watch these episodes, everything leading up to Dobby's dance, you're like, no, it's all right there. It all was foreshadowed from the start. Like him being like, oh, Gigantamachia is going to be on the move. He's going to head towards Shigaraki. My dad's probably there. Okay, I'll hitch a ride. Like, it all makes sense, right? And at the time reading the manga, it's not as noticeable, but then when you go back and see it all as an arc, you're like, oh yeah, Horikoshi knew exactly what he was doing with Dobby in this. And Dobby's such a bitch. She's just like, I'm not into this whole lieutenant thing anymore. Bye. Dobby is very narrow, tunnel visioned. He has one focus, and that's stopping Endeavor, and that's literally it. He does not care about anything else. And it's like, okay, what do we do with that? It's great. I mean, it's really funny, but I wanted to get a shot of Toga with her and just the mud coming off her. That was straight up out of the manga. I've been really happy with how Toga's been represented in this. It was really good. But God, there's so many good things, like the animation wise in this episode. Gran Torino showing up on the scene. I'm getting a little worried about him. I forgot. I know Gran Torino getting just throttled by Shigaraki. I'm not ready for it because I love Gran Torino's character. I'm not ready for it and how it's going to be animated in this. They make Deku look so sad in this episode. I'm like, I don't want to picture how he's going to look when Shigaraki thrashes them, and Bakugo too. When Bakugo showed up, I'm like, oh my god, no, this is all getting set up. We were talking in the comments about when we thought this would happen. Like, when did we think it was going to be a thing? And I think the funny thing is Shigaraki, when he's being burned alive, kind of looks like SpongeBob when he's going to see Sandy for the first time and he's like, I need the water. He kind of looks like SpongeBob there. So I was like, I loved it, but it was kind of hilarious too. But we were debating in the comments when Dabi's dance is going to happen and when things are going to go crazy. I really would like it to have been episode 8 because of the rule of 8, but I don't think it's going to be that soon. Someone was commenting they think it's going to be around episode 10, and now looking at where next episode is going to be, I'm like, no, I think you're right. I think it is going to be episode 10 when we get to Dabi showing up. I think that's what it's going to be, and it just gets insane from there. So we'll end the second core with Deku like in a really great place. we'll end the OP with Deku in a really good position. So oh god, with and that would kind of match up with the OP with Gran Torino's cape flying off, right? Him getting just walloped. It's so interesting. I didn't really want to talk about it in the main discussion because it feels a little spoilery, but the whole buildup of Shigaraki and Deku and how all for one and one for all, like they both want each other to go at each other. They both, the two brothers. It's funny, it's like two brothers using others to like solve their own quarrels. And Shigaraki kind of goes along with it for the most part because he doesn't know what else to do, but Deku's like trying to find another way. So I like that setup is being developed in this arc already, and we're starting to see the seeds of that's going to get developed later on, right? But yeah, I can't remember who follows them to the site. I think it's Todoroki. I think it's Shoto. I think it's Shoto because Shoto shows up when Dabi shows up, and that creates the whole family drama of the Todoroki, Keeping Up with the Todorokis part 3, where Dabi does the hair dye and everything. I feel like it's Shoto that's following them, is what I feel like it is. But it might have been Ida. It might have been Ochako. I don't think it's Ochako because I think she finds Toga later on, but I can't remember, honestly. I think it's Shoto or Ida, but I can't remember. And so it's going to be fun to see who it is. But I'm like 90% sure it's Shoto, but I can't quite remember exactly. But yeah, like poor Deku. Deku's just like, he's like, what do I do? I love that Deku's just sitting there and his eyes being green and like just there, like glowing. And then we cut to Shigaraki and he just looks absolutely terrifying with the rainbow eyes. So scary. But yeah, poor Funk Man. He dies. The humor in these chapters of Deku being stressed out, being like, why are you following me, Kachan? And then being like, okay, thanks. Like, that part was really well done. And Bakugo was like, being like, you scrub. I'm not going to let you go after alone. You're going to be my bait so I can fight Shigaraki. And I'm like, oh, Bakugo. Ooh, buddy. But yeah, I don't exactly recall any other spoilery things in this episode. I mean, Bakugo... It's funny that Bakugo starts out this part of the arc thinking that he's going to use Deku as bait. And then by the end of it, he's like jumping in the fray to sacrifice himself for Deku. It's poetic. I like Bakugo. I like shipping Bakugo with Kirishima. I like shipping those two together. But I have become a Baku Deku first friend too. Shipper friend. So I do like the moments of that here. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I was going to talk about Aizawa. We get a little bit of feedback, a little bit of Vigilantes spoilers where we see, again, if you've not read Vigilantes, you need to. You need to at least read the Aizawa backstory from that series because it's so good. But the image of him like with the injured arm looking down as a kid and seeing Kurogiri's like corpse there. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, him thinking like, I've been kept alive by my friends so my quirk can be used to save others. And I love that Aizawa's like, you leave my students alone. That's like, at this point, because it's been in the series, throughout the entire series, we've always like thought of Aizawa as like, he's a good teacher. He cares for his students. Like back in season 1, he was trying to save them to the best of his ability. But we really get a sense in this series at this point of just how close Aizawa is with his kids. and how much he likes being a teacher and how much he wants to keep them safe. And it's like Aizawa just doing the best that he can, right? And I love how wholesome it is that Aizawa's like, you need to leave my kids alone. Oh, it's great. But yeah, all the Endeavor and Shigaraki showdown, and Shigaraki's just having the time of his life. And Endeavor goes, I'm not an Endeavor fan at all, but I will give Endeavor this. He goes through the ringer. Like, he's trying to figure out the whole thing about all for one or one for all. He's like, what is this? What's Midoriya got to do with it? He's trying to figure that out. He's trying to fight Shigaraki, who is a terrifying opponent. His son's about to get involved. His other son's about to get involved. He's about to figure out his other son that he thought was dead is still alive and is a villain. And it's just, Endeavor's about to go through some shit at the end of this season. And I'm kind of here for it. But I'm like, if you feel bad a little bit for Endeavor after Dabi's dance, I'm like, I don't blame you, because Endeavor, the funny thing about it all is that we've built Endeavor up to be like, from the first 4 seasons, Endeavor was kind of like this, just on a war path, super hyper disciplined dad that doesn't care about his kids, that only cares about being a hero, and he's just no nonsense, very stern, blah, blah. And from season 4 on, we start to see this transformation. I think season 5 is really the point where Endeavor's like, I've messed up really bad with my kids, and I cannot ever make it up to them, but I need to get to be a better person because my kids are clearly affected by it. So, and we've talked about this in season 5, I don't like Endeavor for what he's done. And as a character, I don't buy into a redemption arc for Endeavor, but I buy into an atonement arc where he's trying to at least atone, and he's trying to at least become a better person. I don't want Todoroki and his brothers to have to forgive Endeavor. I don't think that's necessary. But I think it's good that Endeavor is trying to become a better person. He's trying to change, and that's good. But he's like, this season starts to build Endeavor up as having more soul and more compassion. And it's all about to get like a big old wallop in the face by Dabi. And I'm honestly ready for it. I'm like, yes, please. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. But lots of setup this episode. Lots set up with the Nomus. I'm really excited for the next episode. President Mike's stuck babysitting the doctor. What can he do? But yeah, this episode was really good, and I'm really excited for it. So yeah, I hope y'all really enjoyed this discussion and reaction. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But in any case, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 7 of My Hero Academia Season 6.